In at number 10, we have got the Maywing, and there's kind of one main reason at why I'm putting this creature on this list, and it is that it's such an insanely fast travel mount. It is just inherently very OP in nature. Like, you look at this creature, you think of this creature, you think of really speedy travel mounts, and that is just an OP feature in itself, being able to travel around the map with that speed without having to go into creative mode and all of that stuff. And that's not even an option if you're playing on a server. That's only really an option on just a general single player server, and you probably wouldn't do it anyway because it kind of ruins the fun of the game. But still, just I was needing something to compare it to, and although obviously it's not going to go as fast as someone flying around in creative mode, it is going to fly faster than someone in a tech suit, and it's a lot easier to get than a tech suit because you only need to be level 19 to get the saddle for this thing, and then boom, like one of the easiest tames in the game. Just trap it before you actually start knocking it out. That kind of goes for most flyers though, or even pretty much every Ark creature that's a knockout tame. It's just so much easier if you do. So yeah, that's the kind of method to the madness. And then you've got yourself a really great, really quick, speedy travel mount that's also a portable feeding trough, and it can gather berries as well. So just a nice little feature for this thing to have. Next up, we got the Thyla, and this thing kind of works for both PvE and PvP players alike out there. This creature really does pack a huge punch in damage department. It also deals the bleed ability, and it can scale any kind of wall or vertical surface, making it a prime creature for raiding people's bases on a PvP server or just in any given PvP scenario. They're also pretty decent on SOTF as well due to their high mobility, and they're not too difficult to tame on SOTF either, or really just not too difficult to tame in general. The only real difficulty is the biome they spawn in, as the redwoods can not be the friendliest of biomes pretty much all the time unless you're extremely lucky, so you always do have to be careful for these things, and like microraptors and all of that. And there are loads of things that want to kill you in the redwoods, but you know, at least Thylas do spawn there, and you can get a lot of great use out of these creatures. So I really do recommend taming one, and I really do think they are extremely OP. The only thing that could make them even more OP is if they were actually allowed into bosses, because when these things came out, they were seen as too overpowered, so then they didn't get the ability to go into bosses. But now with some newer creatures, it's kind of a little bit outdated in the sense it's actually why the Giga is not on this list. It would have been. This was maybe like 2020, 2019, 2018, but that creature is significantly more outdated nowadays than the Thyla, so, you know, that's why that creature is not on the list, if you were ever wondering at any point. But you can see actually this bleed ability in just a second here. I used to not really know what it did. I just thought it was cool, but it deals damage on a percent base scale instead of just a general damage dealing scale. So no matter the health of a creature, it will always deal the same percent amount of damage, which is why the bleed ability is so OP. And really, if you do have the time, tame yourself a Thyla. You are definitely not going to regret getting one of these things. They are totally worth it, and considering they spawn on the island, they're extremely accessible to like every single Ark player out there without fail whatsoever. Next up, we have got the Theory, and the reason why it's on this list is not just because its saddle was unlocked at level 69.
Nice.
But purely that this creature is an insane gatherer of so many kinds of resources, including fiber, which is actually one which is considerably harder to get than most other resources in bulk with a creature like this, as most herbivores will just gather berries, whereas this thing can gather berries and fiber, and it's also a pretty OP boss creature as well. It really does deal a lot of damage and pack a punch. You could probably tell it would deal a lot of damage in that kind of general area, because look at how large these things' claws are. And when you look at it, it's, I kind of call it the Freddy Krueger of Ark, if you will, or the Tickle Chicken, just depending on what context you really want. Those claws really do, again, pack a huge amount of damage into this creature. Really useful for the dragon boss fight on the island if you've never done that before, and their fiber gathering really does put them up another level for me, as yes, the moss chops is another great fiber gatherer. It really doesn't do all too much apart from that. I'm pretty sure it's really great at gathering organic polymer as well, but this is a much more OP creature and significantly more useful just to the general Ark player out there, and especially with that saddle level being so perfect, you really can't miss an opportunity on taming one of these things. They're also really great at gathering thatch and wood too, so there's nothing not to love about this creature. So I really do recommend you taming one of these things as soon as you can, really. Next up, in at number 7, we have got the RG, and doesn't this creature really deserve to be on the spot for being just such a great PvE creature, and also I'm pretty sure it's a really great PvP creature as well, although I don't really can think of too many uses off the top of my head for this creature in terms of PvP use, but you know, there are definitely still going to pretty much be all the same uses as for PvE players, as this is a really great traveling mount and it has a heck of a lot of weight, so getting metal from point A to point B, or even maybe to point C if you're feeling like it, will be really easy. And you can also pick up a wealth of creatures with this creature, which definitely does aid this thing in being a really great successful creature, because maybe sometimes with a flyer you do want to actually pick up some creatures like Desmodus do not have that ability, although that creature is on the list for several other reasons which I think do put it higher on the list than this creature. It also does have a portable smithy as a saddle, so if you ever break a metal tool if you're out farming, well, the RG can just simply help you with that, as long as you have some metal ingots that have been smelted. Of course, you can't just use the normal raw metal, if you didn't know that already. I'm sure pretty much all of you did. There's not really a point to me saying that, but you know, just might as well, because I'm sure someone's done it before. Then you can easily repair all your metal gear, and they also do regen as well. If you quickly kill something and then eat that dead body, then you get a really nice quick regen buff, which is actually, it's pretty useful, and it's a lot more useful, and you'll use it a lot more than maybe you'd expect. Next up, we got the Cockrotosaurus, and doesn't this creature just objectively have to be really OP? It's a hugely massive carnivore capable of doing a lot of damage, and I also was going to consider putting the Titanosaur and things like the mech on the list as well. Actually, I might put the mech kind of here at this spot, because I kind of think it deserves to be here as well. Really huge damage doing thing, but the Titanosaur is hugely outdated nowadays, and obviously you could kind of just chuck all the Titans here as well, although I really tend to avoid those more as they're not permanent creatures, although they still definitely do count as creatures. You can make them permanent, of course, with things like mods and all of that for the Titans, but you know, I tend to stray away from those things, and the Cockrotosaurus is one of those more powerful creatures that you can get. That's not the only reason why a creature can be absolutely OP, but if you go by sheer strength, then this probably is the most powerful creature on the list. You could say maybe some other creatures could be contested against it and to it, and you know, probably just have to get Cantex to do a video on that, and then there you go, you would get the answers. But I'm probably going to say this is the most powerful one. It's somewhat more difficult to tame than the Giga because there are a few more steps. I have a guide on my channel, I'll put it up here if I actually remember to do it, otherwise you can just search that. It's not actually too difficult, you just have to be aware for some things, because it can go quite horribly wrong if you don't do it right, and you're just going to be wasting a lot of time, which you know you probably don't want to do. But once you do have one of these things, you really are going to enjoy it. In at number 5, we have got the Shadowman, and this creature is here because it is just so jam-packed full of abilities. You really can't deny this creature's absolutely hugely immense strength when it comes to pretty much anything in the Ark space. It is basically uncontested in size and mobility and all of that. There is kind of one other creature which is in the number 3 spot actually, which personally I think is really OP, but that's for a slightly different reason. But when it comes to maybe pure mobility, this does have a lot more. Like, just look at how high this thing can jump. It also does have the hydration buff, which does play a huge part in having a really OP creature. If you have buffs, the Megatherium is another great shout as well, although not on this list. It definitely wouldn't be more OP than some of these other creatures. I think that creature is actually, yes, still, while OP, maybe not one of the most OP, although you could easily put it on this list and have people agreeing with you. You actually may want this thing to be on the list, so I guess I give it a quick mention here. The Shadowman is just so packed full of abilities though. It's got the hydration buff, it's got pack buffs, it's got all of it. It can charge it with damage over time, and it even has natural armor. It really is a great OP creature. Next up, we have got the Reaper, and this thing kind of just had to be here, didn't it? When you think of it, it is just such a big, bulky, huge creature capable of so much damage. Is actually kind of a little bit absurd when you think of it, and it also really does fit into its map very well, but that's not what we're talking about today in this video. We're just talking about a creature that purely deals a lot of damage and also just has great mobility and is generally a really well-rounded creature which is capable of a lot of things. If this was able to go into bosses, then it would be even more OP. It can't though, which is kind of why the creature next up on the list, although maybe not as strong, has a lot of edge over this creature, although you can use it on Extinction for the Titans, although the Giga and the Cockrotosaurus are the more preferable options. But with loads of new creatures coming out in mods in in ASA. I know Extinction's still not here yet, but there may be some other options which people may be kind of becoming more fond to. But either way, just in general terms, the Reaper is a really OP creature. Taming one on Arboration feels like an absolute slog, but a slog that I'm worth going through, and on Gen 2 it's ridiculously easy. So if you don't feel like spending an age going through a huge slog, then tame one on Gen 2 and they're really easy. But once you do have one, you really do feel on top of the world, especially if you do it on Arboration as a process. It's just significantly harder to get it done as on Gen 2. The actual process of taming is obviously the same. And in at number 3, we have got the Dionicus, and this creature literally does bleeder damage to bosses, which is kind of the main reason why it's here, as that is an ability which no other Ark creature has, and it really does make this thing a hugely more OP creature. The fact that it can deal percentage based damage instead of just raw based damage to boss creatures, it's an insane thing to have, and it can grip onto them and all of that, and it's just an insane ability to have. Really, it feels like an absolute cheat if you go into bosses with the Dionicus, because obviously you're also going to go with the pack as well. You're going to have pack buffs on top of it. There's just going to be buffs everywhere, and you're going to melt through those bosses so quickly. Obviously, don't do the Titans on Extinction with the Dionicus, but for everything else, these things work really well, and maybe not the Moda actually, because they're not particularly very good underwater creatures, although they still can do a little bit. Just, you know, maybe that's not particularly what they were designed for, so probably don't bring them to the Moda fight. They'll probably drown anyway, so really, I wouldn't try that whatsoever. I don't really know why I'm trying to like convince you to not use these things for the Moda. I'm pretty sure you weren't going to anyway, but you know, I guess that segment happened. Also, these things take no fall damage, which is a nice thing, so you don't have to dismount just before you hit the ground, no matter like when you fall from a higher place. Sorry, I don't know what sentence was trying to come out there, but that's never going to happen again. Either way, these things great mobility, and although maybe their parkouring skills isn't quite as elegant as the Thyla solution, I still really like it, and it works, and once you get the hang of it, it really does act quite well. And at number 2, we've got the Desmodus, and this creature just kind of has to be here because it can go, no, we don't want to talk about that. It can go invisible in the night. It's not why it can go OP. My brain is in a muddle. The reason why is because Sanguine Elixir exists, it's a blood bag farm, and you can also pick players off riders with this thing, which is absolutely OP for given PvP scenarios. That's why it's not because it can go invisible in the night time. I can't even show you that because I recorded all this B-roll on the Wasteland biome, and then I realised that you can't set it to night. I probably should have gone to the Snow Dome or the Desert Dome, but I didn't. So, you know, but at least you know it exists. These things can also just grab onto walls, like the Tapijara, which is a nice thing. Just don't press E or the dismount button when you're like this. Someone's done it before. Press space or whatever the equivalent button is on console. Not really sure, but, you know, these things, really OP creatures. Sanguine Elixir, absolute cheap for tames. A third of it done like that with a click of a button. And obviously the fact that you can pick people off riders with this thing, insane. Really great for PvP scenarios, and it's also really quick as well. And in at number 1, we have the Rhinoganatha, and the reason why I say this is the most OP Ark creature is it really does feel out of place for just what it can do. The fact that this thing can pick up Rexes and Paraceratherians and all of that just kind of seems a bit out of this world to me, and although they're really useful in ASA at the moment because cryopods don't exist, still they feel really out of place in the general Ark game to me, and kind of maybe too far out of a league that they really shouldn't be going into. And personally, from my opinion, I would like to nerf the Rhinoganatha because I find it way too OP. Personally, also on ASA, I think it should be a little bit rarer. Not quite as rare as it is on just general normal ASE, as you can barely even find those things, but still, on ASA, I feel like there is a little bit of an overspawn there. And you may completely disagree with me on this, and you're happy to, and you can comment down below your thoughts, as I'm always happy to hear your thoughts on creatures like this. But personally, I come from a much earlier stage of Ark playing, from like 2015, 2016, 2017, etc, etc. Going onwards, I did start playing in 2015, so I've been playing Ark for absolutely ages now, and I kind of really like those primitive feelings of the game. Obviously the game has to evolve, and generally it will kind of just get easier, and there'll be some new, cooler, more OP creatures being added as the game progresses, but I feel like this is a huge step too far, and I don't really know what the Volonosaurus, I think it is, will be like on Scorched. Maybe that will be even more OP than this thing, and I don't really like the way that this is all going, but it does seem to be quite popular with the general Ark player base, so I guess it's a working marketing solution for wildcards and snail games and those kind of people. But also with the like expansion pack, like extra creatures as well, that's like even more OP. I really don't like the route that it's going with these kind of creatures. Again, you're very happy to disagree with me, but personally I think the Rhinoganatha is too OP, and currently I think it's kind of the most OP Ark team out there, just no questions asked. Personally, really not a favourite of mine, but you know, that's my opinion on it, and I still do think it is a great creature. I'm not dissing it for any of that, just personally like way too OP. In at number 10 is the Astrocetus, and this is one of those creatures which on the surface may not seem that unusual, but I really can't think of any other game which has a creature like the Astrocetus. And also this was a very new thing to Ark as well. No space things had been done in Ark, and the fact that with Gen 1 we had a space biome and then we had this hunking beast of a creature, it is definitely an unusual Ark tame, as in it isn't like most of the other creatures in Ark, and there are only a couple of creatures which I can think of which are as unusual as this thing, and also at the same time follow the similar genre that this thing has of being a sea creature of sorts. The Astrodelus obviously being a great example there, that meaning space dolphin instead of space whale, which is what Astrocetus means. Speaking of the Astrodelus, next up is the Astrodelus, and the only reason why I would say this is a little bit more unusual than the Astrocetus is its design is more unusual, and also its abilities are a lot more unusual than the Astrocetus. The Astrodelus is essentially like a dart plane. This thing can just soar through the air and do so many acrobatics and shoot loads of lasers, and yes, it has technically been done before, but you wouldn't really expect it out of this creature, and its design and overall feel is very unusual, and I can't think of any Ark creature other than the Astrodelus, of course, which controls like the Astrodelus. And also, again, with the Astrocetus and Astrodelus, it doesn't really make sense that they work outside of space, but they kind of have to. You know, it is the game of Ark, and there are many other maps, and there are many other biomes that aren't space biomes. So yeah, it just kind of breaks the immersion for me there. But you know, it's Ark, they're fantasy creatures. Who knows, maybe they can just dart around in non-space as well. Although they do make a lot more sense in space biomes. But obviously, for most of the time which you'll be using these things, you won't be using them in space biomes. You'll be using them to travel across the map, as both of them are great travelling mounts. The Astrodelus being better for travelling, obviously, as it is a significantly faster creature, and also it's just a lot more fun to ride around on. Next up, we have the Bulldog, and this is strangely one of the cutest yet horrifying creatures that Ark has to offer, and obviously it debuted with Operation, and I'm pretty sure it hasn't appeared in any other map since, but be sure to correct me if I did get that wrong. And in terms of this thing's abilities, it is just a light pet like the Shinehorn and the Featherlight, which essentially will debuff things like Reapers and the Nameless. Not really useful on any other map, but they're definitely really cute, and the fact that there is a mask for the Bulldog, and you kind of put the Noglin in the same spot here as they are similar creatures, they definitely are respected but very unusual tames. Now, I don't know what it is, but the Managama always seems really weird to me, and the Managama just seems like a creature which doesn't seem like any other Ark creature which I can think of in any way, shape or form. This is essentially like a Ferox type thing with ice fists that can jump into the air and has some sort of elemental power, and that also has ice breath and can freeze creatures. This is definitely an oddity and an unusual tame which hasn't been revisited since. There is no other Ark creature to this day which is like the Managama, and also the spelling for it is pretty unusual as well, but once you learn how to spell it once, you kind of don't forget it, as its name is that unusual. And it definitely is an extremely useful creature. Obviously, as you can see, it can travel across the map with insane speeds, and it deals a pretty reasonable amount of damage as well, which you can't get out of every great travelling mount. But the Managama definitely is great for that, and like I said as well, it is great at freezing creatures, and in a moment you will see what it is like when it does freeze creatures. The only thing you really have to watch out for though is this thing is extremely buggy and will get stuck on things, and it just did get stuck on something there. In terms of it freezing, it will freeze creatures for a very, very long amount of time, which is why it is heavily used by PvP griefers. I've heard not as much anymore since they got nerfed, but they still get used a little bit in terms of PvP griefing still to this day. Now, the Rock Drake is pretty similar to the Managama in a lot of things, but I think it is slightly more unusual, partly because it did come first. Obviously, Arboration was the map that came up before Extinction, and also just the way that this creature is formed is a little bit more unusual. This is kind of like a somewhat T-Rexy chicken. I don't really know where those two creatures came from, but I would just call it kind of a T-Rexy, chickeny, turkey thing. I don't really know where I'm going with that. It is so unusual in the form that it is, you can't really relate it to other creatures, which is very, very weird, and definitely a sign which it is very unusual. But its taming method isn't particularly one of the most unusual, like you would expect from this creature. It is the exact same as the Wyvern. You simply steal the egg from the Rock Drake nest, and then boom, once you've obviously incubated and raised up that creature, you have yourself a Rock Drake. And also they do come in a lot of colours as well, this pink being an example, which is actually quite weird for a lot of Ark creatures, as most creatures do follow a similar colour pattern, whereas the Rock Drake has a wealth of colours, and I actually kind of really like the tealy blue more than the colour which I've got here. I like a tealy blue, like a bluey green is what I kind of like on a Wyvern, not a Wyvern, this is a Rock Drake. Why am I talking about Wyverns? In terms of Rock Drake colour, that is my preference. What is your Rock Drake colour? Comment in the comments down below. Don't know why I said comment too many times in a sentence, but comment in the comments down below. What is your favourite Rock Drake colour? As I'd really like to know. Mine is definitely that kind of like bluey, greeny thing, but you know, some of you may be digging this pink and purple which we got here. No, it's not pink and purple, pink and blue. I may be slightly colourblind. In at number 5 is the Gasbags, and this is just a creature which is such an oddity, and also I'm seriously questioning Wildcard here. How did they come up with the idea for this, or did we come up with the idea for this? Honestly, I don't know, but somehow this thing was created, and it's been in the game since Extinction, and I don't really get how it came around or how the idea came for it. It's literally a farting gas animal which flies on its own gas. It's a very, very weird premise, but actually a very cool creature which doesn't require a saddle. The saddle's only there if you have friends, unlike me, because I don't really have friends that I play Ark with, or friends in general, you know, living that life. But that saddle is there if you do have friends, unlike any YouTuber which you can really think of. Us YouTubers, yeah, we don't really get the friends. This is why we do YouTube, you know. But if you do have friends, then your friend can go on the saddle, and then you can travel together, which is nice, you know. The Diplodocus has a significantly higher passenger count, but that's not on the list because that isn't a very interesting or unusual creature. Anyway, I should stop talking about the Diplodocus. What's actually good about the Gasbags? Well, on Extinction, this is actually one of the best creatures out there for gathering metal. Obviously, you still have the RG, and the Gasbags is significantly harder to control than the RG, but it is a lot cuter. And it's just, I like using the creatures which came on that map. And I'll always try to use the Gasbags, as long as I can control it at the time, to do some metal runs. And once you learn it, it is a really, really great creature for doing those metal runs. If you don't just get stuck in a trench with loads of Wyverns and get killed a couple of times. That happened because I forgot to enable creative mode, stupidly, for this B-roll. But, you know, editing, it looks like I did nothing wrong and I escaped perfectly. But there was multiple attempts in this, and then I flew too high, and I got up caught into the world border. I am definitely not a great pilot of the Gasbags. Also, if you find yourself like this, make sure to dismount just before you hit the ground. It will save you. Now, the Rhinoganatha, I think, came from us. It was from some kind of creature voting thing anyway, and we did vote for this creature to be in the game, and it is one of the more unusual ones. There isn't any other Ark creature which is really like this thing. And also, I know loads of people are saying Rhinoganathas are rare, and I get that they're rare. On ASA at the moment, I've seen about 5 Rhinoganathas in the swamp biome. Is there an overspawn of Rhinoganathas on ASA? Wildcard, can you tell me please, if you're watching this video, because I've had way too many encounters with this thing. I've seen 1 Giga, and I've seen 5 Rhinoganathas, and these things are generally a lot rarer than a Giga, as they only spawn in one specific biome, whereas Gigas can spawn on several places around the map. In terms of the Rhinoganatha's uses though, this thing is essentially just an upgraded Quetz, which is a lot faster and deals more damage. As unlike a Quetz, it will deal more damage. It is significantly harder to tame and uses the taming method, which the Reaper has, which I'll talk about because the Reaper is ahead on this list. Oh my god, spoilers. But either way, the Reaper is ahead on this list, so I'll talk about his taming method similarly there. But you can always check out my Rhinoganatha taming guide if you want to know fully, in detail, how to tame this thing. And you'll see brief b-roll of me actually taming it, because this is from the guide video. I was just a little bit lazy at the time, and I was just like, I'll take my guide video, and then I'll just chuck that into b-roll. Which is obviously why you're seeing me tame it here, and you're not seeing me tame every other Ark creature in all of the other b-rolls. But it is a very long and arduous taming process, which is extremely difficult and requires 2 Rhinoganathas, not 1. You're going to need 2 of those things, and you're going to need pheromone, you're going to need to kill one, and then yeah, there's so much. Just check out the tutorial. I really shouldn't talk about it more. The Rhinoganatha is just one of those creatures which is really unusual, and we voted for, and for some reason spawns way too much on ASA. Have no idea why, but it does. This is the Rhinoganatha. It's one of Ark's most unusual tames. The spoiler is here, with the Reaper being in at number 3, and the Reaper is a even more unusual tame than the Rhinoganatha, as obviously it came way before. The Rhinoganatha is the most recent creature which has been added to Ark, apart from the Astrocetus. Don't know if that is in ASA at the moment, but I'm going to count that as the most recent Ark creature. Is that thing coming to Scorched Earth or the island? Either way, it might not be here yet, so don't take my word on that one. Not quite sure. That may be a Scorched Earth creature. Actually, thinking about it, that is a Scorched Earth creature. The Rhinoganatha was the one for the island. Yes, the Rhinoganatha is the latest creature of Ark at the moment. And the Reaper has obviously been in Ark for ages. It came out in Operation. That was way back in 2017. And this thing was such an oddity at the time, but it really fits into that map, and its taming method is one of the most unusual in the game. Essentially what you do is you'll get a Reaper Queen to a really low amount of health. You can use a trap for this, it will make it so much easier, and you can use light pets as well. Not for the other bit of the taming method though, as that won't work with a light pet. You can't have a light pet when this thing impregnates you when you go up to it after you put its health down. At least I'm pretty sure you can't. Don't anyway, as it may somewhat fail, as the Reapers really do not like light pets. But after you have been impregnated by the Reaper, obviously after you damaged it and the impregnation has occurred, you just get a ton of XP, and then boom, you have yourself a Reaper. In at number 2 is the Bloodstalker, and this is just essentially a spider with, I don't think 8 eyes, but it may have 8 eyes, or it may have 12. Honestly, comment down below how many eyes the Bloodstalker has, as right now I don't know. I'm sure I could look up an image, but I know one of you out there knows the answer to this. Well, obviously you can tell why the Bloodstalker is so unusual. No other Ark creature is really like this, and you could say the Rhino is another kind of spidery thing, but that is just kind of like a normal spider. The Bloodstalker is like a vampire, blood-sucking Spider-Man thing with an obscene amount of eyes. It may be 8, it may be 12. I'm not quite sure. Make sure to let me know. I want to know how many eyes the Bloodstalker has, as I'm really not sure, as I have not seen one up close and personal for a while. But also, this thing's taming method is very much an oddity. Like, no other Ark creature, apart from the Desmodus, obviously, off the top of my head, which I can think of, has the same taming method. You essentially get blood bags, which it will need to syringe out of your body, or you can obviously use the Desmodus to harvest them now, but originally you just had to use the blood syringe to get those, and then it will just eat those, and then you'll tame yourself a Bloodstalker, and you can feed it some creatures before to get 100% effectiveness. But honestly, I've never bothered with that, as I'm not going to do like insane things with this creature. Like, I'm not going to fight bosses with the Bloodstalker. I just want a good one. And obviously for missions, you're not even going to need a Bloodstalker, but it is good to get one, obviously, so you can get to those missions, so you can get all of those hexagons. But before you get a Bloodstalker, you should definitely go to the Bogrish missions to practice. And finally, in at number 1 is the Volonosaur. And the reason why I have put this thing in at number 1 isn't because it has the weirdest taming method or anything along those lines. It is just, there has never been any kind of creature like the Volonosaur apart from the Volonosaur. I can think of no other Ark creature like this tame. And albeit, yes, it does have one of the simplest taming methods out of all of the creatures on the list. It is just a very simple knockout tame. No other Ark creature compares to this thing in terms of what it is. This thing, again, is just a moving turret, and there's no other creature which does this like the Volonosaur. And sadly, the damage of the turrets doesn't scale with melee, but obviously you can keep leveling up that stamina to shoot even more turrets out. And obviously I wouldn't recommend it in this close of a proximity, but it is definitely an extremely useful thing, which when you ride this thing you will use a lot. But it also just have your general just attack, hack and slash, and it also can shake spines off of it as well. And also I think when you look at it head on when it's shooting turrets, it's a little bit creepy. That animation just to me is a little bit on the creepy side. So thank you to my wonderful patrons Ekaterina Puchkova, Karina Thorne, Dominic Masijewski and Ethan Tapia, who have all supported me through Patreon or through YouTube memberships. If you want to join this list, then go join Patreon or YouTube members, but thanks to all of these guys.